We have been getting a significant number of calls with investors wanting to know if they can recover losses from their GWG L-Bond investments. The answer is yes. In most cases, we are able to help people recover, and we have recovered significant sums of money for a bunch of our clients who had been invested in these so-called L-bonds. So GWG was a company that was engaged in kind of speculating on life insurance, really. They would buy up policies from elderly people, more or less sort of betting on when they would die, because when they passed, then the life insurance would pay out to GWG instead of to the person's family based on whatever they had bought the investment for. I think there were some other things that they did to try to raise money, but the reality is, whether it was ever a legitimate business or not, it became had the makings of a Ponzi scheme as time went on, meaning that it stopped making any money. It reported in 2018 and 2019 that it suffered losses. It was basically only keeping itself afloat through raising more and more money, selling more and more of these investments. And the way it sold these was it created a product it called an L-bond, which doesn't mean anything. It just, I think, kind of sounds safe. And they paid off they promised certain percentages based on the length of time. And we found that a lot of financial advisors and brokers were selling this all the way into April of 2021. So despite the fact that it had become very apparent that these investments, the underlying company for this investment was losing money, they continued to sell it. And so what's the problem with it? Well, it was a very high risk investment. And what we find is that overwhelmingly it was being sold to people as low risk, people with conservative risk tolerance, and really just wasn't in their best interest, or it wasn't suitable for them. So the rules changed in June of 2020, but in these cases, they kind of amount to the same thing, that they weren't appropriate for the people who are being sold them. There's a few extra obligations that they have under regulation best interest, but either way, we found that a vast majority of these cases, there's no justification for the recommendation to the L-bond. So the L-bond itself is kind of worse than a junk bond. You know, a junk bond is something that's been rated by a ratings agency, has clear, transparent financials, and just is a little shaky. They don't make as much money as maybe they should, and so there's some risk that they won't be able to pay back the debt. And so people call them junk bonds or high yield bonds if you're the person trying to sell them. These L-bonds were unrated, they were illiquid, they couldn't be sold, and the underlying financials were very shaky, and they were selling them anyway. And there was only one reason for this, and it's because they paid outsized commissions. GWG paid significant commissions and even some additional sort of payments that were being made to the broker-dealers who were selling these things. For example, Centaurus just got sanctioned by the SEC for selling these products to retail investors, so regular customers, who had a moderate or conservative risk tolerance, and then it made no sense for them to be selling these products to people, these high-risk products, and self-disclosed as high risk within their prospectus that the brokers certainly knew about, and the broker-dealers definitely should have known about, but they sold them anyway. GWG, of course, went on to file bankruptcy, and it now looks less and less likely that there's going to be any kind of recovery for the investors, maybe a few cents on the dollar. It's unclear. There's been significant litigation that's really eaten up any money that was available. The liquidating trustee has been hinting at that they're going to make a distribution soon. I don't know what that means, but probably in the next 3 to 6 months would be my guess. And I expect that, and others in the industry expect them to be rather low. And the investors will have officially lost the vast majority of their investment. So the claim is not against GWG, at least that we can help with. It's instead against the broker and the company they work for that sold it to you. They have sales practice obligations, they have a standard of care, and in most of the cases that we've seen, they breach that standard of care, and so we're able to bring a case and help people recover their losses. So if you were sold GWG L-Bonds and want to talk to us about a potential claim, we're happy to talk to you about it. We'll take a look. We don't charge anything to look at it and tell you what we think your options are and whether we think there's a path for recovery, and we can help you do that.